Every person has dreams. Every person has goals. Yet so many of us find ourselves stuck, not because of a lack of talent, not because of a lack of opportunity, but because of a simple habit that silently steals our potential: laziness. Laziness is not about being incapable. It is about being unwilling to act when action is needed. And the truth is, it's not a permanent state. It's a signal, our mind telling us that we are comfortable, safe, or maybe even fearful of the effort required to grow. The real question is not whether you are lazy, but why you allow laziness to dictate your decisions. When we understand the root of inaction, we gain the ability to transform it. Laziness often shows up when we lack clarity about our goals. If your destination is foggy, you won't feel motivated to move forward. That's why the first step to overcoming laziness is not discipline, it's vision. A clear, compelling vision pulls us forward far more effectively than forcing ourselves to move. But vision alone is not enough. We need structure. Think about this: success is rarely the result of giant leaps. It is almost always the outcome of small, repeated actions done consistently. Laziness thrives when tasks feel overwhelming. Break them down into small steps, and suddenly the mountain turns into a path you can walk. Action, no matter how small, creates momentum. And momentum kills laziness. Another hidden truth is that our environment shapes our energy. Surround yourself with people who constantly procrastinate, and you'll find excuses come easily. Surround yourself with those who push forward, and you'll find progress becomes contagious. The people around you either feed your laziness or fuel your potential. Choose wisely. Finally, understand that overcoming laziness is not about perfection, it's about progress. There will be days you slip, days you delay, days you avoid the work. That doesn't mean you're lazy forever. It means you're human. The key is to recognize it, reset, and take the next step forward. Overcoming laziness is not a one-time victory, it's a daily choice. And with each choice, you move closer to unlocking the potential that has always been inside you. So the challenge is simple: stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop expecting motivation to magically appear and start moving. Action will give you clarity, structure will give you consistency, and progress will unlock your potential. 5 keynotes of the speech: laziness is not a permanent trait. It's a signal that can be transformed. A clear and compelling reduces procrastination and creates motivation. Breaking goals into small, manageable steps builds momentum and kills laziness. Environment and the people around you strongly influence your energy and habits. Overcoming laziness is a daily choice of progress, not perfection. Every person has dreams. Every person has goals. Yet so many of us find ourselves stuck. Not because of a lack of talent, not because of a lack of opportunity, but because of a simple habit that silently steals our potential: laziness. Laziness is not about being incapable. It is about being unwilling to act when action is needed. And the truth is, it's not a permanent state. It's a signal. Our mind telling us that we are comfortable, safe, or maybe even fearful of the effort required to grow. The real question is not whether you are lazy, but why you allow laziness to dictate your decisions. When we understand the root of inaction, we gain the ability to transform it. Laziness often shows up when we lack clarity about our goals. If your destination is foggy, you won't feel motivated to move forward. That's why the first step to overcoming laziness is not discipline, it's vision. A clear, compelling vision pulls us forward far more effectively than forcing ourselves to move. But vision alone is not enough. We need structure. Think about this: success is rarely the result of giant leaps. It is almost always the outcome of small, repeated actions done consistently. Laziness thrives when tasks feel overwhelming. Break them down into small steps, and suddenly the mountain turns into a path you can walk. Action, no matter how small, creates momentum, and momentum kills laziness. Another hidden truth is that our environment shapes our energy. Surround yourself with people who constantly procrastinate, and you'll find excuses come easily. Surround yourself with those who push forward, and you'll find progress becomes contagious. The people around you either feed your laziness or fuel your potential. Choose wisely. Finally, understand that overcoming laziness is not about perfection, it's about progress. There will be days you slip, days you delay, days you avoid the work. That doesn't mean you're lazy forever. It means you're human. The key is to recognize it, reset, and take the next step forward. Overcoming laziness is not a one-time victory. It's a daily choice. And with each choice, you move closer to unlocking the potential that has always been inside you. So the challenge is simple: stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop expecting motivation to magically appear and start moving. Action will give you clarity, structure will give you consistency, and progress will unlock your potential. 5 keynotes of the speech: laziness is not a permanent trait. It's a signal that can be transformed. A clear and compelling vision reduces procrastination and creates motivation. Breaking goals into small, manageable steps builds momentum and kills laziness. Environment and the people around you strongly influence your energy and habits. Overcoming laziness is a daily choice of progress, not perfection. Clear and compelling vision reduces procrastination and creates motivation. When people talk about motivation, they often describe it as a spark that suddenly appears, something that willpower alone can generate. But the truth is that motivation rarely comes out of nowhere. Motivation comes when we have something meaningful to move toward. Without clarity of vision, our efforts feel scattered, our goals feel vague, and our actions lose direction. This is the reason so many people procrastinate. They delay not because they lack ability, but because the destination is unclear. Imagine trying to set sail without a map or compass. Even with the best ship and the strongest crew, you will drift aimlessly. In the same way, when your life lacks a compelling vision, your energy drifts into distractions, entertainment, or endless waiting for the right moment. The human brain naturally resists tasks that feel meaningless. It looks for shortcuts to conserve energy, which is why scrolling on a phone or watching one more episode seems more attractive than tackling an important project. But when there is a vision that excites you, the equation changes. Suddenly, the brain doesn't see the task as wasted energy, but as a step towards something valuable. A person training for a marathon wakes up early to run not because running itself is always fun, but because the vision of crossing that finish line is clear and compelling. The clarity makes the discomfort bearable, even energizing. Think of every major achievement in history, whether in science, business, or art. The individuals behind those achievements were not superhuman. They were people driven by a vision so strong that it pulled them forward even through setbacks and failures. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before creating the light bulb, but his vision of lighting up the world was far stronger than the frustration of failed experiments. That is the power of a clear vision. It gives meaning to effort, and meaning always beats laziness. Clarity also simplifies choices. One of the hidden causes of procrastination is indecision. People waste hours wondering what to do first, which goal matters most, or whether they are even on the right path. When you have a compelling vision, those choices become easier. Every decision is filtered through the question, does this move me closer to or further from my vision? That clarity eliminates much of the hesitation that feeds procrastination. It is not that tasks become easier, but they become obvious, and obvious tasks are far harder to ignore. A compelling vision also transforms discipline. Many people see discipline as forcing themselves to do what they don't want to do, but discipline tied to vision feels different. When your vision excites you, discipline no longer feels like punishment. It feels like commitment to something you deeply care about. Think of a musician practicing for hours. To an outsider, it may look like discipline in the hardest sense, but for the musician with a vision of performing on stage or recording an album, that discipline is an expression of passion. Vision turns discipline from a burden into a bridge. The absence of vision, on the other hand, leaves a vacuum that procrastination loves to fill. Without direction, even the simplest tasks feel heavy. You may have experienced this with chores or assignments that lack context. But when someone reminds you why it matters, how it connects to a bigger picture, suddenly the same task feels different. A student studying math without purpose sees only numbers and formulas, but the same student who dreams of becoming an engineer or architect sees math as a tool to design their future. The clarity of vision transforms the same work into meaningful work. Another powerful element of vision is that it sustains motivation when initial excitement fades. Most people start new projects with a burst of energy only to abandon them once the novelty wears off. Vision keeps you grounded when excitement disappears. It becomes the anchor that keeps you moving forward even when progress is slow. Athletes, entrepreneurs, writers, all of them face long stretches of effort where no applause or reward is visible. The only thing that sustains them is their vision of what lies ahead. Without that vision, the struggle feels meaningless and quitting becomes easy. With vision, the struggle feels purposeful and persistence becomes natural. There is also a psychological shift that happens when you clarify your vision. Instead of asking, do I feel like doing this? You start asking, does this action align with where I want to go? That shift removes emotion from the decision. You no longer wait for the perfect mood or the ideal burst of energy. You simply act because the action connects to something greater. Procrastination thrives on feelings. It waits for comfort. It waits for inspiration. Vision overrides feelings with direction. Even on days when you don't feel like working, your vision reminds you why you must. The beauty of vision is that it does not have to be grand to be compelling. For one person, it may be the dream of building a company. For another, it may be providing a better life for their family. For someone else, it may be becoming healthier and stronger. The scale of the vision does not matter as much as the clarity. What matters is that it excites you, that it matters to you personally. When you know why you are doing something, procrastination loses its power. Every step, no matter how small, becomes meaningful. Breaking goals into small, manageable steps builds momentum and kills laziness. One of the most common reasons people fall into procrastination is because they see the entire weight of their goal at once. The mountain looks too high, the task looks too complex, and the distance feels too far. The human mind is easily overwhelmed when it is confronted with the size of an outcome rather than the simplicity of the next action. This overwhelm translates into avoidance, and avoidance looks like laziness. But laziness in this case is not a lack of ability. It is a natural response to feeling that the challenge is too big to even start. The solution is not to force yourself to climb the mountain all at once, but to break it down into small, concrete steps that feel achievable. Every great accomplishment is the result of accumulated small actions. An author does not write a book by sitting down to type 70,000 words in one sitting. They begin with a single page, then another, and slowly momentum builds until the book is complete. A person who wants to run a marathon does not start by running 26 miles on the first day. They start with a mile, then 2, then 3, and over time, the body and the mind adapt to the rhythm. When you break things down in this way, laziness loses its grip because the next step feels too small to avoid. It's easy to skip a daunting mountain, but it's much harder to justify skipping a single step forward. The science of motivation also supports this. Our brains are wired to respond positively to progress. Even the smallest accomplishment releases a sense of reward, which makes us more likely to continue. This is why crossing items off a to-do list feels satisfying. It is not the magnitude of the task that matters, it is the fact that something was completed. When you design your goals as a series of manageable steps, you create a chain of small victories. Each victory gives you energy, and that energy compounds into momentum. Laziness thrives in the absence of momentum, but once momentum begins, it becomes increasingly difficult to stop. Consider someone trying to get healthier. If they focus only on the idea of losing 50 pounds, the task feels overwhelming. It might feel so impossible that they choose not to start at all. But if they shift their focus to drinking more water today or walking for 20 minutes, the barrier to action disappears. That small action, repeated, leads to gradual progress, and progress builds belief. Soon the person is no longer forcing themselves to act. They are motivated by the results of their small steps. This same principle applies to every area of life: study, business, fitness, or personal growth. Breaking the big picture into smaller tasks not only makes it manageable, it makes it enjoyable. The trap many fall into is perfectionism. They believe they must have the perfect plan or take the perfect action. This leads to hesitation, and hesitation feeds procrastination. But when you break a goal into tiny steps, you no longer worry about perfection. The focus shifts from doing everything to just doing something. For example, instead of trying to perfect an entire presentation in one sitting, you start by writing down 3 key ideas. Instead of building an entire business plan in one night, you commit to writing 1 page a day. The smaller the step, the lower the resistance, and the easier it becomes to begin. Beginning is often the hardest part, and once it's done, momentum carries you forward. There is also a psychological benefit to reducing tasks into pieces. Large goals feel abstract, but small steps feel concrete. Abstract ideas create uncertainty, and uncertainty often paralyzes action. But a simple next step creates clarity, and clarity drives behavior. If your goal is to save money, thinking about financial freedom may feel abstract and intimidating, but setting aside a small amount each week is concrete and doable. Over time, those small actions accumulate into significant results, and what once felt impossible becomes reality. Breaking goals down also teaches patience. We live in a world that celebrates instant results, but true growth requires consistency over time. By focusing on small steps, you learn to value the process rather than only the outcome. This shift in mindset is powerful because it removes the constant pressure of arriving and replaces it with satisfaction in progress. Laziness feeds on frustration and impatience, but when you find meaning in small steps, you remove its fuel. Every day becomes an opportunity to move forward, not an impossible race to the finish. Momentum itself is a form of motivation. Once you start moving, the act of moving generates energy. Think of pushing a heavy cart. At first, it requires tremendous effort to get it rolling. But once it starts, the wheels turn more easily, and soon it feels lighter than before. Goals work the same way. The first step may feel heavy, but once you take it, the next becomes easier, and then easier still. This is why people who consistently take small steps often appear highly disciplined. They are not relying on extraordinary willpower, but on the momentum built through action. Breaking goals into manageable steps is not just a tactic, it is a mindset. It is the recognition that success is not about doing everything at once, but about doing the right thing right now. Laziness cannot survive in an environment where progress is constant, even if progress is small. Every small action chips away at the mountain, and before long, what once felt impossible becomes inevitable. Environment and the people around you strongly influence your energy and habits. Many people assume that laziness is purely an internal struggle, something that comes only from within. They believe it is about their personal discipline, their mindset, or their motivation alone. While those things matter, one of the most underestimated forces that shape our behavior is the environment we live in and the people we surround ourselves with every day. Human beings are not isolated creatures. We are deeply influenced by the energy, habits, and standards of those closest to us. If you spend most of your time around people who constantly procrastinate, complain, or avoid responsibility, their behavior starts to feel normal, and soon your own standards begin to slip. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with people who are disciplined, motivated, and committed to growth, their energy becomes contagious and pushes you to rise to the same level. Consider how environment shapes even the simplest habits. If your workspace is cluttered, noisy, and filled with distractions, it will naturally be harder to focus. The environment signals your brain to wander because everything around you is pulling your attention in different directions. But if your environment is clean, organized, and set up for productivity, your brain receives a signal that this is a place for focus and work. Laziness often thrives not because people lack willpower, but because their environment makes laziness easier than action. A television remote within reach, snacks placed on the desk, or a phone full of notifications creates constant temptation to avoid meaningful work. By shaping the environment to remove these triggers and replace them with cues for action, you dramatically reduce the grip of laziness. The same principle applies to people. Human beings are naturally wired to mirror those around them. This is called social contagion, the idea that behaviors, attitudes, and emotions spread through groups like invisible waves. If you spend time around individuals who are ambitious and hardworking, you unconsciously begin to adopt their patterns. You might notice yourself waking up earlier, reading more, or working harder. Not because you forced yourself, but because the group standard became your standard. Conversely, when laziness is the norm in your circle, It takes tremendous energy to resist falling into the same habits. It is like swimming against the current, and eventually most people give in. Think of athletes training together. Alone, they may not push themselves as hard, but when surrounded by teammates striving for excellence, each one feels pulled to give more. The environment of commitment and energy creates a standard that laziness cannot survive in. The same effect happens in workplaces. An office where employees are disengaged and only do the bare minimum creates an environment that suffocates initiative. But in an environment where energy, creativity, and accountability are the norm, people find themselves inspired to contribute more. It is also important to recognize that environment is not only physical or social, but also digital. In today's world, much of our time is spent online, and the digital environment shapes our mindset as strongly as the physical one. If your feed is filled with endless distractions, negativity, or entertainment that encourages passive consumption, it fuels procrastination. But if you intentionally design your digital environment to include learning, inspiration, and positive role models, it fuels growth. The content you consume daily quietly conditions your habits, either reinforcing laziness or encouraging action. Your environment also reflects your identity. When you choose to place yourself in spaces where growth is valued, you are making a statement about who you want to become. Joining communities, groups, or circles where people aim higher raises your sense of what is possible. Being in the presence of excellence makes mediocrity uncomfortable. Laziness loses its comfort when the people around you refuse to settle for less. This is why mentorship, accountability groups, or even simply having a friend who pushes you can be transformative. They act as mirrors that reflect back your potential when you are tempted to shrink. There is another subtle but powerful influence: emotional energy. Some people drain your energy through constant negativity, complaining, or criticism. Spending time with them leaves you mentally exhausted, making laziness more likely because your energy has been consumed by their influence. Others, however, uplift and energize you. A simple conversation with them can leave you inspired to act, to create, or to push forward. Recognizing who drains your energy and who fuels it is essential in creating an environment that reduces laziness. This does not mean you must cut everyone out of your life who struggles with procrastination or negativity. But it does mean you must be intentional about how much time you spend in certain environments and how you balance it with spaces that elevate you. Even small adjustments, like working in a quiet library instead of a noisy room, or spending more time with a motivated friend instead of an unmotivated group, can create a massive difference in your behavior. Ultimately, the environment you create is either working for you or against you. Laziness is not always about weakness of will. It is often about the path of least resistance. If your environment makes laziness the easier option, you will naturally fall into it. But if your environment makes progress the easier option, you will naturally move toward action. That is why shaping your environment and choosing your company wisely are not optional steps in overcoming laziness. They are central to unlocking your potential. Overcoming laziness is a daily choice of progress, not perfection. One of the greatest traps people fall into when trying to improve their lives is believing they must get it all right immediately. They convince themselves that if they cannot commit to a flawless routine, if they cannot sustain perfect discipline, then they are destined to fail. This belief feeds procrastination because perfection feels unattainable, and when perfection feels unattainable, action feels pointless. Laziness grows in the shadow of perfectionism because people would rather not start than risk falling short. But the truth is that progress, not perfection, is what drives transformation. Every day offers a new choice, and the measure of success is not whether you did everything perfectly, but whether you took a step forward. This daily choice is powerful because it shifts the focus from what you lack to what you can do right now. Instead of carrying the weight of yesterday's failures or the pressure of tomorrow's expectations, you center your attention on today's opportunity. Laziness often thrives because people feel paralyzed by the enormity of their goals or discouraged by their past patterns. They think, I've failed so many times before. What difference will it make if I try again? Or the goal is so big, I will never get there. But when you reframe the challenge as a daily choice, the burden lightens. You no longer have to conquer the entire journey at once. You only need to make the choice to progress today. Think of someone trying to learn a new skill, like playing the guitar. If they focus only on mastering the instrument, the distance between where they are and where they want to be feels overwhelming. They might avoid practicing altogether, labeling themselves lazy or untalented. But if they instead commit to 10 minutes of practice each day, the process becomes manageable. Those 10 minutes accumulate into hours, the hours into weeks, and soon they begin to see progress. Each day they made a choice, not a perfect choice, but a step forward. That is how real growth is built. Progress also creates confidence. Perfection ironically erodes confidence because it constantly reminds you of what you are not. Progress, on the other hand, reminds you of what you are becoming. Each time you act, even imperfectly, you reinforce the belief that you are capable of change. Laziness weakens in the face of this belief because you no longer define yourself by inaction. You define yourself by movement. The act of choosing progress daily rewires your self-image. You start to see yourself as someone who moves forward, even if slowly, and this identity becomes a powerful motivator. The beauty of focusing on progress is that it allows room for failure. Everyone slips. Everyone has days when they procrastinate, avoid responsibility, or fall back into old habits. When perfection is the standard, one slip feels like the end. People say, I missed a day, so what's the point of continuing? And soon they spiral back into laziness. But when progress is the goal, failure is simply part of the journey. Missing one day does not erase the progress of yesterday, nor does it prevent the possibility of tomorrow. Each day stands alone, and each day offers a fresh choice. This perspective makes it far harder for laziness to take permanent root because no single setback defines you. Progress also teaches patience. Laziness often disguises itself as impatience, the desire for instant results. When people do not see immediate change, they become discouraged and stop trying. But when you focus on daily progress, you learn to value consistency over speed. A single step may feel small, but repeated daily, it becomes unstoppable. The person who walks steadily will always surpass the one who runs fast for a short distance and then stops. By embracing progress, you build the patience required to sustain effort, and that patience becomes a shield against laziness. It is also important to recognize that the choice for progress does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it is as simple as opening the book, making the call, or starting the workout. Small choices compound, and each choice weakens the habit of avoidance. Laziness thrives when you postpone, but it dies the moment you begin. Even if you only do a fraction of what you intended, you have chosen progress, and that keeps the momentum alive. Over time, these small daily victories add up to transformation far greater than any single act of perfection ever could. This mindset of daily choice creates freedom. When you release the pressure of perfection, you stop fearing mistakes and start embracing effort. You no longer wait for the perfect mood, the perfect conditions, or the perfect plan. You act because you value movement over stagnation. That is the essence of overcoming laziness. It is not a single battle won once and for all, but a decision made repeatedly. Some days will be easier, some days harder, but every day you are given the chance to move forward. And with every choice, you prove to yourself that laziness is not your master. Progress is. The journey to overcoming laziness is not about waiting for some magical burst of motivation or expecting perfection from yourself every day. It is about understanding that laziness is not your identity. It is a signal that can be read and transformed. It is about building a vision so clear that it pulls you forward, breaking down your goals into steps so small that momentum becomes unavoidable, shaping your environment so that progress is easier than avoidance, and surrounding yourself with people who push you to rise higher. Above all, it is about choosing progress daily, even when perfection feels out of reach. Each choice you make, no matter how small, is proof that you are not stuck. You are moving, you are growing, and you are unlocking the potential that has always been within you. The life you want does not arrive in one perfect leap. It is built in the quiet, consistent steps you choose every single day.